Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar where we're going to discuss the upcoming ratings unification at Charity Navigator. We're so glad you could join us today to learn about this big news that we're going to launch later this year. I'm Laura Andes. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Charity Navigator, and I'm here with my team, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Leah?
Hi there, and welcome to our webinar. Thanks for joining. My name is Leah Prince, and I am the Vice President of the Impact and Ratings Beacon. Bilal?
Hello, everyone. Again, thanks for joining us. My name is Bilal Taylor, and I am the Vice President of Culture and Leadership, which incorporates the Culture and Community and Leadership and Adaptability Beacons. And I'll pass it on to Matt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Viola, Vice President of the Finance and Accountability Beacon.
Next slide, please. Today, the four of us are going to walk through the ratings unification that will happen in advance of the giving season. We're going to go over what that means for the finance and accountability, impact and results, culture and community, and leadership and adaptability beacons, and how to make the most of your ratings. We're also going to leave a lot of time for questions. This webinar is mainly focused on the 9,000 star rated charities who've been rated for a long time at Charity Navigator. We're going to be providing content that's specific for you. If you are an Encompass charity, you are welcome to stay on. However, we will have in 2 weeks a different webinar that will be focused on content that's more relevant for you. So let's just dive right in. Next slide. Coming this fall, we're going to release a single unified rating system. For those of you who have been following Charity Navigator, right now you might be aware we have two systems running in parallel. The first is our historical star rating charity that rates the largest 9,000 charities in the United States. The second is our new Encompass rated charity rating system, which rates smaller nonprofits and rates about 180,000. We will be bringing those together and mainly merging them mostly into the Encompass rating system. And we're going to talk today about how that's going to work. Next slide. So as I said, this unification will bring together the star rating system, which I assume most of the participants are, and this Encompass rating system together. So let's talk about how that will work. Next slide. Here's how the ratings will change. Next slide. So first of all, after a lot of research, we are going to give all charities a 0 to 4 star rating as their ultimate rating score. For those of you who might have noticed in the Encompass rating system, right now we're using a 0 to 100 point scoring system. And the star rating system had this 0 to 4 star system. Now all organizations who are rated, regardless of whether they were star rated or Encompass rated, will have that 0 to 4 star rating. We did a lot of research with our users and our donors, and everyone thought that the 0 to 4 star system was understandable, conveyed the right level of precision, and was a key part of the Charity Navigator brand. So now we're applying it to everyone. So for those of you who are star rated now, you'll be able to have the same sort of star system that you've talked about forever. If you're a 3-star, you'll still be a 3-star, etc. And you can talk about how you've been a 3-star or a 4-star for a number of years. So this will give you a great continuity of ratings. This was an issue that a lot of you have asked us about over the years. So we're happy to say that we're going to maintain the 0 to 4 star rating. Next slide. The second is that the evaluations will become much more comprehensive. In essence, all nonprofits will now be evaluated on these 4 beacons or assessment domains that are part of the Encompass system. So historically, the star rated system was mainly on finance, accountability, and transparency, which looks very similar to our finance and accountability beacon. Now everyone will have the opportunity to be rated on impact and results, culture and community, leadership and adaptability, as well as finance and accountability. We're going to talk a little bit more about what each one of those means in later slides, but now Everybody will be rated the same way across these four beacons, which are much more comprehensive. I'm personally really excited about this because I think this really lets you tell your story better. Your organization are not just the finance and accountability scores of your organization doesn't tell the whole story. You're doing great work out there. And they cut across all of these beacons. And I think that this really gives you an opportunity to more holistically tell your story to your donors. So I hope you're also excited about this too. Next slide. So again, these four beacons provide a very robust evaluation of charities. And each of the beacons will have a 0 to 100 point score. Those four scores will be aggregated based on weights, which I'll talk about in a second. And that will become this ultimate 0 to 4-star rating. So a user will be able to look at, are you a 0 to 4-star organization, if that's the level of the detail that they want, or they'll be able to dive into each beacon and be able to see your score on a 0 to 100 point scale for each beacon. Next slide. This is a question I've gotten a lot, which is I think a lot of charities are nervous about what this might mean for their score if they're evaluated across all four beacons. Our initial analysis is that the vast majority of the nonprofits rated through the STAR system will see either a positive or neutral impact on their rating. When we take a larger view of what a charity is doing, many of them are doing great work, and this system will better highlight that for you. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about how your current STAR score will translate in this new system. In the short run, your current STAR score, which you have the STAR, but also there's a 0 to 100 point score that underpins that STAR, will become your F&A score. So in this example, you can see that before they were a 4-star rated charity and they had a score of 98% out of 100. That 98% will become a 98% on their F&A score. And then if they've earned other beacons like impact and results, leadership and adaptability, and culture and community, those all come together to give an overall score of 97%, and they maintain their 4-star rating. So this is just in the short run where the actual STAR score will become the F&A score. In the future, we're going to merge the F&A beacon score that's applied to other charities and the STAR score a little bit more together. And we'll give you more information well in advance of that merger. But for today, you should just be able to take your current 0 to 100 STAR score and apply that to your F&A beacon score to see how your rating will change. Next slide. One point I want to make really clear, because this is a bit confusing, is we're on a journey in terms of beacons. So right now, beacons are not mandatory at this time. So an organization might have just their F&A beacon, which is their former STAR score. They might have F&A and LNA. They might have F&A and CNC. And while we're encouraging you to earn your beacons because they really will maximize your rating and bolster your ratings, they're not mandatory at this time. And the number of beacons you have dictates how they'll be weighted in the overall score. So in the upper right-hand side, if you have all 4 beacons, you will see that 32% of your score will be your F&A score, 50%, because we think that's the most important, will be your impact score, 10% will be your culture and community score, and 7.5% will be your leadership and adaptability score. So that's if you have all 4 beacons, but many organizations won't have 4 beacons. So here's a different example. What if you don't have impact and results? Then 80% will be your finance and accountability score, 10% will be your culture and community, and 10% will be your leadership and adaptability. There are a lot of different permutations of this. So we have a little tool on our website, which I've linked below, where you can click on and you can play around and say, okay, if I've got 3 out of 4 beacons, what will the weighting be and how will that change? And then you can sort of back of the envelope calculate your score based on what you know. We will say the more beacons you earn, the more will bolster your overall ratings in the unified system and increase the visibility on our platform. So it's in your best interest to earn more beacons and really tell that more holistic story about what your nonprofit is doing. You're so much more than finance and accountability, and this gives you the opportunity to really show that to your potential donors. Next slide. Let me just walk through another example of a before and after. So here's a 4-star rated charity who currently has a just above a 90%. In the new system, you can see that becomes their finance and accountability score, but they've done really well in culture and community leadership and adaptability and impact and results. So they maintain their 4-star, but now they have a 96%. So their overall score is much better. So this is just an example of how earning additional beacons can really help bolster your score, particularly if you're just almost your 3-star, very close to 4-star. Earning your leadership and adaptability in culture and community, and if eligible, which we'll talk about, impact and results, can really push you over the edge into 4-star rated territory. All right, next slide, please. So what impact will this have? I think, as I've said, next slide, this will have a lot of great impact. First of all, this is a much more holistic methodology. It looks at a lot of different aspects of what your charity is doing, where you are in your life, where you are in terms of your focus areas, and just tell a better story for your donors and nonprofits. Next slide. And for donors, you know, this is going to make it much easier to find, compare, and support nonprofits. They're all being scored on the same way. We don't have these two bifurcated systems. They're all getting the 0 to 4-star rating. And so it gives you really an opportunity, especially if you've earned all of your beacons, to really stand out for donors. For you, you're going to be able to engage in the ratings process a little bit better, communicate a broader story to about your ratings to stakeholders, and benchmark against other nonprofit organizations. For example, if you're really focusing on your culture and community and your DEI practices, you might want to highlight that you have 100 out of 100 in culture and community at Charity Navigator. So you can pick and choose different aspects of your rating to highlight for different groups. I think it could be a really powerful way for you to increase your overall profile and your fundraising success. Next slide. So now we're going to go beacon by beacon. I'm sure you have a lot of questions about how it's going to work at each beacon. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt Viola, who is our finance and accountability beacon expert. And he's going to talk about what this means for finance and accountability. Matt is the longest tenured Charity Navigator employee, so he has knows all the ins and outs of the former STAR system and how it's going to relate in this new format. So Matt, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, great. Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon again, everyone. So Charity Navigator has been evaluating a nonprofit's financial health since our founding back in 2001. And we've been evaluating accountability practices since 2011. And this rating's been called our STAR rating, as Laura alluded to, also known as the Charity Navigator 2.1 rating methodology. And we still believe that these are two core areas of a nonprofit's operations, and we will continue to evaluate them under this new unified system. But as Laura has shared, they'll now be one of 4 beacons that produce the overall STAR rating. So in this unified rating system, the finance, accountability, and transparency rating that exists today will become the finance and accountability beacon. So let's talk a bit more about what that means in detail and what you need to know about this beacon. Next slide, thank you. There will be no changes to what are the current finance, accountability, and transparency metrics at this time. And that scoring system will remain the same with the 0 to 100 point scale. So the CN 2.1 score today will become the finance and accountability beacon score in October. And the only change you may see from the current rating is if we get a new 990 and evaluate that accordingly in this time frame. While most STAR-rated nonprofits were updated only once a year based on a newer 990, we did publish rating updates throughout the year on a monthly cadence. This is going to change as we go into this unification, and for the rest of this calendar year, we'll be publishing updates every other month, beginning in October. Our process for pausing newer ratings as a result of the pandemic which negatively impacted many organizations, remains as is for now, and will continue that process. Next slide, please. So in terms of the Finance and Accountability Beacon, here are a few things you should be continuing to do. First, continue to electronically file your IRS Form 990 with the IRS as soon as it is completed. There's been some delays on that front, but the sooner you can get it into the IRS, the sooner we'll be able to get it and process a new rating. Also, continue to submit updates via our nonprofit portal as you have in the past. These could be updates to your organization's name, address, mission, if that's changed recently, or any of the accountability metrics that are currently posted on your website, but you're not currently getting credit for it. You could submit that through the portal and get credit for those, just as you have in the past. So no real change there. And also consider, if you haven't done so already, completing the pandemic response survey form in that portal. This would allow you to pause your rating and keep your pre-pandemic rating as is for now, while we continue to evaluate the effect on the pandemic and we continue to collect post-pandemic 990s and evaluate that data. So that's a little bit more about the FA Beacon and what you're going to see in store for you in the coming months. I'm going to pass it off to Leah to go over impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And again, good afternoon and welcome to everyone. I'd like to start by mentioning something that's a little different about the Impact and Results Beacon. We are the most methodologically rigorous beacon. So to create impact ratings at scale is a really big, it's a big and exciting project for our team. However, because we are methodologically rigorous, all organizations may not be eligible for an impact and results rating right away. We are ramping up over time. So while you may be eligible for the other beacons right away, there may be some delays in the impact and results beacon eligibility. So let's go ahead and jump right into what you need to know about the impact and results beacon. In impact and results, our aim is to measure how much an organization achieves relative to the cost required. So how we do this is by creating a cost effectiveness assessment methodology, and we do this on a program level basis. What this does is this allows our donors to compare the impact of organizations within a specific given program area. To assign this impact rating, we compare the cost effectiveness assessments to a rather broad benchmark to determine whether the program was a good use of resources given viable alternatives. Over to the right on this slide, you can see a list of some of the programs that are currently eligible for a rating. The scope of program eligibility for an INR score is constantly growing. It's constantly evolving. Our methodologies are evolving, and our small team is working as fast as we can to build out more program areas. And I do want to note with some emphasis that if your organization is not currently eligible for an impact and results rating, there will be no penalty. Again, you will not be penalized in our search algorithms and our Encompass rating score. Rather, the other beacons, as Laura mentioned, will be given a higher weight in your overall Encompass score. So what should we do now? If you haven't already, please visit the Charity Navigator nonprofit portal and sign up for an account. From there, you can determine if an assessment methodology has already been developed for a program which is run by your organization, and if you're eligible to submit data. Of note, we do require that the individual program comprises at least 15% of your organization's total program costs for eligibility. And at this time, we can evaluate your organization on one program only. We aim to allow for multiple programs sometime this winter. If you're not operating a program for which we currently have a methodology, you'll see a prompt in our nonprofit portal to submit a request for our analysts to work on your program area. If you are eligible, you can go ahead and open the impact and results questionnaire, and then your data will assist our team of analysts in providing a rating for our organization. I'll finish with one final note of encouragement, and that is please try to hop onto the portal and enter your data before the deadline that Laura will go over in just a little while. And there are two reasons for this. One is that our organization and our Impact and Results Beacon does significant quality assurance with on your data that you enter into the nonprofit portal. And organizations and the data that they enter that are flagged for QA are typically given the clearance to move forward within days or weeks. But sometimes there's some iteration that needs to be done between our analysts and the organization before data are approved for a rating. So the process can take a little bit of time. And if if we're not finished with the QA process by ratings release, you'll be pushed into the next rating cycle. Second, we have a feature in our nonprofit portal which allows you to save your data, log out, and then log back in another time before you hit that submit data button. We ask for very specific data in our portal, and we found that a lot of representatives from nonprofits need to use that feature to log off and check with either other folks in their organization or annual reports, financial records, etc. So again, we encourage you to hop on before the deadline. And with that, thank you. I will pass this on to my colleague, Bilal.
Thank you very much, Leah. And again, as my colleagues have said, it's just wonderful to be with everyone today and appreciate your interest and the hard work everyone here is doing for your constituents with and for them. I want to say a word about the Culture and Community Beacon before we jump into what you should know now. As you're getting a flavor, each beacon has its own sort of unique flavor and approach, but I will say, much like my colleague Matt mentioned about financial stewardship and accountability, I'm excited that this beacon helps us to highlight how we're stewarding the colleagues that we work with and the communities that we work with and for. Much like Leah also mentioned, this is a growing beacon. We will, as we go, develop new methodologies. We'll always try to be as noisy as we can to let you know when those new methodological approaches are rolling out. But also, as we try to model culture and community, we have the pleasure of working with a broad field that is also looking at some of these questions. And so we have the pleasure of bringing in several of our colleagues, stakeholders, donors, and others really help us think through how culture and community matters. But let's take a look at where we are today and what you should know right now about the present beacon. Presently, there are two assessments that comprise the culture and community score under the Encompass rating system. One is constituent feedback, and the other is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. And why don't we turn to each one of these quickly to talk a little bit about the particulars. The DEI assessment assesses the extent to which organizations put equity into practice in your internal operations and programs. So as we look at belonging of staff and ways in which we create a broad tent under which all staff feel welcome, can contribute to mission, and also that constituents feel as though they're being listened to and heard within this beacon, we're excited to roll out the DEI assessment for those purposes. And for constituent feedback, this, similar to DEI, it also looks at the external and internal workings of an organization. But in this case, we're very much interested in how organizations are collecting feedback from constituents as a first step, and then taking that additional step to use that feedback to improve programming. One last word here is that when both of these assessments are lit up for your beacon, 7% of that overall 10% score will be comprised of your DEI score, and the other 3% represents constituent feedback. If only one of those is present, then they will represent 5% of the overall culture and community score. So what do I hope you do now? If we can switch to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, we do work in partnership with a range of partners to collect these data and then develop our methodology. A primary one here of importance for this call is our friends at Candid. So what we'd love you to do now, if you don't already have a nonprofit profile under Candid, formerly GuideStar by Candid, we would love you to sign up for that profile. And then when you go there are two assessments that you can fill out that populate your scores. For constituent feedback, we ask that you fill out the How We Listen survey as part of that profile. This will give you a chance to get more into the particulars of how you're listening, the practices you're engaging in, and we really want this to be a conversational beacon to the extent we can. So we give you an opportunity to talk about any challenges you've had on the path, with the hopes of down the line being able to provide resources that help you to potentially address those any feedback challenges that are extant for your organization. The other part of the profile that we're encouraging to go to is the demographic section of your candid profile. Under that demographic section, there's an equity strategies checklist or survey that lists 14 items broken out by policies and practices that you're currently engaging in to sort of vie for more diverse organizations that have equitable outcomes and are inclusive of all the constituents that you work with and for. And again, the data you enter into Candid will be used to update your organization's culture and community score prior to release on the schedule that Laura will be sharing in a couple of moments. So let's talk leadership and adaptability, if we could. As you'll see, we're excited about all these beacons. They're all unique. And what I love about this particular leadership and adaptability beacon, and this beacon overall, is that this gives you a chance to really be reflective on your practices. So we'll talk a little bit about the items we're particularly interested in, but our gambit here and the idea is that there's something about leadership and adaptability, the style of leadership, shared leadership, that allows organizations in these changing times to be nimble, whether those be internal or external dynamics that you have to address. And when this beacon, when all 4 beacons are lit, as Laura mentioned, this will represent 7.5% of your score. What should you know now about leadership and adaptability? As mentioned, this leadership and adaptability beacon assesses how organizations implement leadership practices that allow your organization to stay nimble in changing environments. I think, as Matt Viola mentioned, thinking about the pandemic response, these are the types of things we want to be sensitive to, because we understand that normal business is not normal business given internal and external dynamics that may impact organizations. But what has not shifted and changed is our scanning of the literature and the vast amounts of literature that are available in a range of conversations with nonprofit leaders to try to help us get into the particulars of what leadership and adaptability can and should mean in the field, as well as challenges that organizations may have in implementing these practices. The questionnaire for leadership and adaptability, another unique feature, is that through the nonprofit portal, which we'll talk about, we're able to capture these data ourselves. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about how you will see the breakout when we talk about when you go to the portal and fill this particular survey out. This is broken down into 3 areas. The first one is strategy, which you'll see is 40%. Then we move on to leadership, which is 30%, and then adaptability. Under strategy, we're really interested in, what is your mission? How have you developed your strategic plans, and really kind of getting big picture around where it is that your organization is headed and what voices you bring into that planning process. Next, under leadership, really interested in not just one individual leader or board, but really how is their distributed leadership across the organization, such that if a leader transitions, et cetera, that leadership is dispersed and that there's accountability throughout your organization. And lastly, we'll give a chance to talk about what adaptations or changes or shifts had you had to make in the last year, for example, to help us understand how you view adaptability within your organization and how you've set your organization up to continue to do the great work you're doing in the midst of those internal and external changes. And if you fully complete this particular survey, then you will get 100% for the beacon at this time. So what do we hope you will do now? We hope, not during the call, we hope you're listening intently, but shortly thereafter, we hope you will go again and visit our nonprofit portal, much as Leah mentioned earlier, and sign up for an account if you don't already have one, and complete the leadership and adaptability questionnaire in this portal. As mentioned, you know what these data are. One idea may be to think about looking at your strategic plan first. Think about some of the folks that really across your leadership team that maybe have some of this information, because we know this may not live with one individual. And then go ahead, fill out this survey, and on the calendar, that schedule that Laura will mention in a moment. When you do that, we will update your leadership and adaptability score before our upcoming release. And with that, I will pass it back over to Laura.
So again, we just want to make sure it's clear about how you can earn all of these beacons. Next slide. So just to recap, if you have not gone and completed signed up for a portal, please do that now. It's a pretty easy website, www.charitynavigator.org/portal. That is really where you can submit impact and results information if you're eligible, see if you're eligible, put yourself on the wait list. It's also where you can see leadership and adaptability questionnaire and submit that information there. Next slide. And again, if you haven't done this already, please go over to Candid and complete as much as your profile there. In a few weeks, we're going to be ingesting that data, and that will become your CNC beacon rating if you have completed those sections. So please go ahead and do that there. We know this is a lot. I will say we are working on figuring out how to harmonize our data collection processes. So forgive us for this sort of interim clunky solution where you have to go to 2 places. I will say there's a link directly into Candid from the portal if you just want to start with our portal. Next slide, please. So let's talk about dates. The giving season is just around the corner, and I'm sure you are all preparing for it, as are we. So next slide. Here are some dates to remember. For all the star-rated charities, if we had new data from the IRS and new 990s, we just did an update at the beginning of the week on Monday. So that is done, and you can probably log on to Charity Navigator and see if your score has changed at all. On September 6th, when you log into the portal, in addition to being able to submit data, you will also be able to see preview your new score. So you'll be able to see if you're a 4-star, how the different beacons applied, etc., and what your new score and the new ratings rendering will look like, because we are rebranding, and so it's going to look a little different. If you haven't done beacons and if you're at that right on the edge of 3 and a 4-star, it might make sense for you to go in and complete your leadership and adaptability. If you haven't done that, and you can do that now, or you can do that after September 6th. But September 6th, you're going to be able to see exactly what your score is going to look like. And it's just a good start to familiarize yourself with the portal. We did get a question about for star rated, the FNA beacon says not applicable. That will change after September 6th. You will see a slightly different rendering of that. We're just still building that out. Then between now and October 3rd, you can submit data to Candid or through our portal to increase your score and bolster your ratings. So if anytime between now and then, you can start doing that. It won't automatically update in your preview score after September 6th. That will be static. I wish we had the capability to automatically update. We're just not there yet. That's a future feature. So don't be upset if you go in and you put in your leadership adaptability and you log back in and your preview score is the same. That you just it will just show that that was done. Then on October 18th, between October 3rd and October 18th, we'll recalculate all of the scores based on all the new information that's been collected, and your new ratings will be published on our new website with its new logo and all it's beautiful looking, and that will be launched. So really what we're asking you to do today is to log into that portal, log into your Candid portal, and earn as many beacons as you can. 9 out of 10 times it will help you. Next slide. And here is what your new ratings will look like. So this is our new logo, this is our new ratings rendering. I hope you love it as much as we do. So the 3-star will look like the one in the green in the center, and the blue is the 4-star on the right. And so you will be able to go in and download from that portal that new seal. And you can use it on your website and marketing and fundraising materials. That seal really does make a difference. Donors are looking for that seal. It shows trust, it shows that you are a strong nonprofit. So use it. Next slide. So again, how can you make the most of your ratings? If you are a 4 or 3-star rated charity, it's really in your best interest to maximize your rating. So again, you'll be able to, on September 6th, you'll be able to go in and download your ratings toolkit in that portal and use that to send emails to your supporters announcing that your organization is still or now a 4-star rated charity or 3-star rated charity. Post about it on social media, especially using during your giving season, Giving Tuesday, etc. And use that seal at key moments of conversion, so online donations, etc. I also think there's a lot of opportunity for you to use specific beacon scores. If there's something you really want to highlight, you can also say, you know, we're 100 out of 100 on impact, or we're 100 out of 100 on our finance. So you can really take these different beacons and use them as you see fit in your marketing to tell a broader, maybe more targeted story. Next slide. So your to-dos, again, log into the nonprofit portal today and submit all of that information if you haven't already done so. Log into Candid and complete your profile. Log on September 6th, that's the day after Labor Day, so easy to remember, and preview your score and download your ratings toolkit, and really share your rating and brag about it during the giving season. Again, on the right, you can see the address for the portal if you're not signed up. Next slide. So where can you learn more? Next slide. We're going to continue to have some blogs on the merger. You can continue to reach out to us with any questions. And we're just going to try to over communicate during the next several months so that you know exactly what you need to do when you need to do it to make this merger as smooth as possible. So stay tuned for more details. If you're not subscribed to our mailing list, which I'm assuming most of you are because you're on this webinar, but make sure you are. Look out for emails and tell your friends in the nonprofit sector to sign up as well. So thanks so much for letting us go through this presentation. Next slide. And now it's the chance for you to ask questions. We've seen a lot of questions come in through the chat, some great questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal, our moderator, who's going to read those questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can in the next 30 minutes.
Yes, there were a lot of questions that came in, so I'll be reading as many as we can off, as Laura said. So the first one we have is, please address what triggers a new evaluation in the future. Will this still be 990 driven?
Yeah, I can take that one. Thanks. So it depends, because now with the 4 beacon system, you might add new information to the other beacons that will trigger an update to the rating. So at least for this calendar year, we're going to do updates every other month. And when we do the update, we will look at whether we have a new 990 process for that organization, or whether they provided additional information for the beacons. And that's what's going to trigger the rating. So it is a bit of a change, because in the past, a new 990 for the star rated would be the main driver of a new rating. But in this new system, it could be multiple things that might drive an update to the rating.
All right, and our next question is, do you have an idea of how the 9,000 nonprofits will fall under the 0 to 4 stars?
Yes, another great question. I've done this analysis. So obviously we have to look at based on data we have today, which is 990 data we have today and the other beacons. We're hoping that based on us talking about it much in this presentation, that you'll start adding information for the other beacons. But with that being said, if we look at just where we are today and we apply this 4 beacon system, now many organizations don't have any of the other beacons just yet. The scale for 0 to 4 stars actually remains the same from what it is today. Traditionally, we've had most of our organizations, the most of our organizations of the 9,000 star rated would be 3-star, then 4-star and on down. And that remains when we apply the 4 beacon system. But again, that will be changing over time as more organizations add information and earn the other beacons.
All right, next question. We are a 4-star charity at around 91%. I understand how beacon data could bolster our percentage, but will not adding beacon data detract from our current star or percentage rating?
I'll take that. So there's no, right now, there's not having a beacon, it won't hurt you. So, you know, that's a choice you can make. We will be using it to bolster ratings and what gets revealed on our site. So it's in your best interest to get as many beacons as you can. Most of the beacons, especially leadership and adaptability, that will probably boost your score if you complete that. Because right now you can basically get 100 points if you complete it. So in the short run, I think it's in your best interest to complete as many beacons as you can, because that will boost your profile.
All right, next question. This is about the impact and results beacon. What if your nonprofit offers many program areas listed on the impact and results slide, for example, food assistance and financial assistance for medical patients?
Thanks, Crystal. I'll take this one. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are working towards allowing organizations to enter and to be rated on multiple programs. And our goal is to have that in place around March of 2023, but the goal is slightly fluid at this point. In the meantime, if you enter data for more than one program, our current policy is to produce your rating based on the program that operates at the highest fraction of your total programmatic costs. So we make that decision. If you would like to have more power in that decision, then until we allow for multiple programs, I would suggest that you enter data for only the one program that you think best represents what your organization's mission is, how your organization's mission should be reflected.
Okay, also for the impact and results beacon, is there a way for people to see that my organization has joined the wait list for the score instead of just saying not scored?
Thanks, Crystal. I like this question because we just talked about the not scored language in our impact unit today, and we realized that maybe changing that language to something more like ineligible might be better for the donor-facing language. So right now, our website does not reflect that you joined the wait list, but this is something that's come to our attention, and we're working on the language in our portal. Thanks for bringing that up.
All right, jumping over to culture and community, specifically the sections within Candid, it seems like there's some confusion about whether it's the equity strategies or demographics.
Happy to jump in there. And yes, if it, if it wasn't clear enough in the slide, the name of the overall section in Candid's nonprofit profile is the demographic section. That begins with questions related to the sort of individual leader, CEO, president. It looks at board and then the leadership stratum that can make financial decisions within your organization. For us, we don't rate that because, again, rating demographics is not something that we thought at this time would be appropriate. It's just sort of capturing the demographics of your organization. After you've jumped into the demographic section of that profile, which is the overall heading, when you go beneath that, the next level down is the equity strategies checklist, which is a part of that overall profile. So it asks the demographics, and then it goes into the 14 policies and practices that promote equity and put equity at the center of your organization. So if you go in, you fill in the profile, and you complete the equity strategies checklist, those are what populate a score for DEI and culture and community at this time. Thank you for the question.
All right, next question. To clarify, the score based on our 2021 financials will be calculated under the new unification system.
Yep, I can answer that one. Thank you. So not necessarily. So it all really depends on the 990 that has been filed, the most recent, and that we've received from the IRS. So when we make this unification, it'll be based on the 990s that we have and have been processed, not necessarily the one you just completed or just most recently filed. But we'll continue to do the updates that we have in the past. And then also I'll note again with the pandemic response, a post-March 2020 fiscal year on 990 has the ability to not go up if the rating is going to be lower, as provided you fill out the pandemic response form. So it's not necessarily tied to any specific 990 year. It's based on the most recent 990 we have in-house that we've evaluated. That's what will go up in the new system.
Another question, if we're not able to complete 1 or 2 beacons by October 18th, will that be reflected in our score?
It will not be, but I think it's in your best interest to try. LNA in particular is a pretty light lift. So, you know, I think you're just missing out if you don't at least do that one.
Next question, will organization representatives still be tied to only one person, or with this change, will more than one representative be able to upload or do beacon work?
Yes, thank you for that one. So this is a bit where the legacy system for Star Rated was specific to have one official representative for each organization. The new portal that allows access to some of the new beacons, or to the new beacons, allows for multiple reps from any organization. Part of the unification will be combining those 2 portals into one. Until then, there are some things from the legacy portal that only the individual one rep for that organization can have access to. But there could be multiple for accesses to the new portal, and then that'll all come together in the fall, and we'll have one portal which will allow continue to allow for multiple.
And I would thank you for that, Matt. I would also like to add, when you go to Candid for the culture and community, to fill out those particular surveys and assessments, you can have the initial designee can invite others to have the sort of editing privilege, if you will, at your organization. And so that's a function that you can look at on Candid, and that way have multiple folks be able to update any part of your nonprofit profile, including how we listen and the equity strategies that fall within that demographic section of your profile.
All right, next question. After October 18th, when is the next update? Is it 2 months from that date?
I say a qualified yes. We're still kind of sorting that out, but we're trying to move to more regular cadence, particularly for 990 and LNA data. The Candid update, there'll be, if you do between now and October 18th, or sorry, October 3rd, your Candid update, and then the next Candid update will be actually in March. So it kind of depends, but we are trying to get a regular cadence of updating 990 and LNA data and INR data as it comes in.
All right, next question. How often will Charity Navigator pull DEI and constituent feedback from GuideStar? If DEI is 7% of the 10%, how is the scoring done on DEI? And if we answered yes to 5 questions or 6, what is our percentage?
So I'll take the first one and then kick it over to Bilal. So I just answered this, but I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. So anything between now and October 3rd will be updated. We'll pull that data from Candid, and then we'll pull from Candid again in March. Bilal, do you want to take the second half of that question?
Yeah, and for the second half of that question, we try to be very transparent about our methodology. So on our methodology page, we actually explain the scores moving from the floor of 80% up to 100 for that rating, based on the number of responses. And at this time, there is a floor of, when we looked at across the tens of thousands of responses we got, we noticed that At a passing rate, there's about 4 of the 14 was where the field was. And so that's the floor. And you can look in the methodology page to see how we move up. As Laura said earlier, I'm going to use the word noisy. We'll be very noisy about methodological changes because we understand that starting out, we wanted to set a bar to just give us a baseline of where the field is. We want to encourage practices to be for there to be an uptake of practices as we go. So we thought rather than rolling out in March with the rating that was in any way punitive, we wanted to give a snapshot of where organizations are based on the scoring methodology we have. And then we will move forward, but we'll always be very noisy about letting you know when that changes. As far as the individual 7%, 3% split, we believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion in those practices, but what we're asking for in constituent feedback is actually, and that how we listen actually has elements of diversity, equity, inclusion in it. So in a sense, DEI becomes a container on which other aspects of the beacon itself are sort of, that holds them together. But within we also wanted to make a statement that those practices, whoever you're serving and your constituent, whatever area of difference or inclusion, whatever that means for you, is important enough for us to give it weight within this beacon. And I think that reflects where the field is, where we've talked to donors at, and our several conversations with dozens of nonprofit leaders themselves. But again, any changes to that methodology or scoring, we will be very noisy about it, and we'll take into consideration the voices, including those that are joining us today on this call.
All right, we're going to try and get through a couple more questions. See, we have, will there be an explanation overall on the site for donors if your organization is not yet eligible for impacting results?
Yes, so there currently is language around that. If a donor clicks on your organization's profile page and they do not have an impact and results score, there's language around why that is, and specifically it lists several reasons why an organization might be ineligible. Thanks.
Great, we have another question. The words "right now" keep being said. Can you give any indication of when right now is? How much time do we have to complete all 4 beacons before it starts impacting our final overall score?
Great question, because I want to make sure you leave with a firm understanding of this. As of October 18th, the score that you'll see on your site will be the new merge score. So it will be your star score will become your F&A beacon score, and then any other beacons will be aggregated to create a new comprehensive 4-star system. So that is the cutover date. After that, the star system, as you know it, which we call internally as CN 2.1, will sort of go away, and everyone will be under the comprehensive 4-beacon system Encompass.
All right, and we'll do one final question. Can you explain the connection between Candid and Charity Navigator?
I'm happy to offer my answer to that, Laura, and very interesting question. I'm glad you asked it. Not the least because we have we've jointly written a blog about this particular issue and opportunity as it relates to DEI with the leaders of Candid and our CEO and president here. But I will say, from my perspective, the connection between, or what brings Candid and Charity Navigator together is that as a shared commitment to the idea that stewardship of funds and resources needs to be married to this broader question of how you steward your human resources, and the style of work also matters, for lack of a better word. So I think the whole idea of an Encompass system, or this comprehensive picture of what a healthy organization looks like and an effective one, I believe, I don't want to speak for them, I believe we share that. And then I would say one other difference is, if you think about the Candid profiles, many of Candid sort of gives credit to their primary constituent, which is the nonprofits themselves, for transparency in many cases. So if you complete this, if you're sort of sharing these practices you have skills in these other dimensions. I think we also are very much concerned about that opportunity. What I think we do and where we differ is that we want to then translate that to donors to be able to make, we have ratings. A candidate that doesn't necessarily rate between different organizations with a numerical or star rating. So for us, we'd like to show donors that yes, organizations are transparently doing this work, but there's some way in which you can differentiate between one organization that is maybe very strong in impact results, or maybe has more to say about CNC, et cetera. So you'll see we both sort of, I would say we care for the field and that comprehensive view. But for us, we go the extra step of being able to generate a rating that allows donors to give with confidence, where from my estimation of a candidate prioritizing privileges through its seal, giving you that stamp of transparency, which certainly matters to donors as well. So I feel like between the transparency and the stewardship, we hopefully can come together as partners to help shape the field and give donors a really broad perspective on what nonprofits and charities are doing. That is my view. I speak for myself and my candidate, obviously, but Laura, I don't know if you have a different take
I think
on that.
that was a great answer. Thank you.
All right, back to you, Laura, to wrap it up.
I really appreciate everyone who came. I hope that answered the majority of your questions and that you have a good sense of what to do next. If you have additional questions, please do reach out, and we'll be sending a follow-up email with the slide deck so you can have that as well. This will also be posted online, so please share with friends who may have missed it and colleagues. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us.